I'm Meryl and I grew up in what you'd call an ordinary family. Mom and Dad were hardworking folks, trying their best to raise 2 girls. That's right, I had a younger sister, Sarah. She came into this world 5 years after me, and boy, did she shake things up. From the get-go, I was the good kid. Studied hard, got along with everyone, never caused trouble. Sarah? She was a whole different story. I remember this one time when I was 10 and Sarah was 5. We were at the grocery store with Mom and Sarah wanted some candy. No, Sarah, Mom said firmly. We've got plenty of snacks at home. Sarah's face turned red. But I want it now, she screamed, throwing herself on the floor. People started staring. Mom looked embarrassed, trying to calm Sarah down. But Sarah wouldn't budge. She kicked and screamed louder, I hate you. You never let me have anything. That was just one of many incidents. As we grew older, things didn't get better. Sarah's behavior became more erratic. She'd have these intense mood swings, going from laughing to screaming in seconds. One day, Mom and Dad took Sarah to a psychologist. When they came back, I could tell something was up. They sat me down in the living room, looking all serious. Meryl, Dad started, we need to talk to you about Sarah. Mom chimed in, the doctor says Sarah has something called a DHD. It means her brain works a bit differently. I nodded, not really understanding. Is that why she acts out all the time? Yes, sweetie, Mom said. And we need your help. We have to be extra patient with Sarah now. Little did I know that conversation would set the tone for the next decade of my life. Everything became about Sarah, her needs, her moods, her outbursts. And me? I was expected to be the understanding older sister, always patient, always forgiving. But let me tell you, it wasn't easy. As Sarah's behavior got worse, my parents' attention shifted more and more towards her. They were so afraid of upsetting her that they started giving in to her every whim. Meanwhile, I was left to fend for myself. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't neglected. But compared to the constant attention Sarah got, it felt like I was invisible sometimes. As the years went by, Sarah's behavior became a roller coaster ride. One week, she'd be almost normal, helping with chores, doing her homework, even being nice to me. But it never lasted. I remember one afternoon when I was 16. I came home from school to find Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, actually doing her math homework. Hey Sarah, I said, surprised. How's it going? She looked up and smiled. Pretty good. I think I'm finally getting this algebra stuff. For a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe things were finally turning around. But a week later, that hope was shattered. I was in my room studying when I heard a crash downstairs. Sarah was screaming at Mom. I don't care about stupid school. You can't make me go, then came the sound of breaking glass. I sighed and put my headphones on. Just another day in our house. When I turned 17, things got even worse. I was trying to prepare for college applications, but Sarah seemed determined to make it impossible. One evening I was at my desk, deep in a practice SAT test. Suddenly, ear-splitting music blasted through the walls. I stormed into Sarah's room. Can you turn that down? I'm trying to study. Boo-hoo, she mocked. Poor Meryl needs to study. Well, I need to listen to music. Deal with it. I went to our parents, hoping they'd intervene. But their response left me speechless. Honey, Mom said, you know your sister has trouble controlling herself. Try to be understanding. Dad nodded. Maybe you could study at the library? We don't want to upset Sarah. I couldn't believe it. But what about me? Don't my needs matter? Mom patted my hand. Of course they do, sweetie. But Sarah's condition makes things difficult for her. We all need to make allowances. I went back to my room, fuming. It was always about Sarah, always. A few weeks later, Sarah dropped a bombshell at dinner. I want to go live with Grandma, she announced. Mom and Dad exchanged worried looks. Are you sure, honey, Mom asked. That's a big change. Sarah nodded. Grandma said I could come anytime. She'll let me do whatever I want. I held my breath, hardly daring to hope. To my surprise, my parents agreed. Maybe a change of scenery would be good for everyone, Dad said. As Sarah packed her bags, she cornered me in the hallway. "Don't think you're getting rid of me," she hissed. "Grandma's loaded, you know. She'll spoil me rotten and leave me everything in her will. You'll be working your ass off in college while I'm set for life." I just rolled my eyes. "Whatever, Sarah. Just go." For the next 6 months, our house was peaceful. I could finally focus on my studies without constant interruptions. I aced my SATs and got accepted into a public college in another city. I'd been in college for a few months when I got the call. It was Mom, and she sounded exhausted. "It's Sarah, she's back home. Your grandmother, she couldn't handle Sarah anymore. Said she was too disobedient, always causing trouble. She even blamed us for bad parenting. Now she won't talk to any of us." I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of frustration and pity. "I'm sorry, Mom, that must be tough." "It is," she admitted. "We're trying everything. Taking her to a new psychologist, giving her whatever she wants. We're hoping it'll help." Then came the kicker. "Meryl, sweetie, about your college expenses, we can't help you anymore. All our money is going towards Sarah's treatment and, well, her demands. You'll need to support yourself from now on." After we hung up, I just sat there trying to process it all. Once again, Sarah had managed to upend my life without even being present. But I wasn't about to let this derail me. I found a part-time job at a local diner and called my grandmother. "Of course I'll help you, dear Grandma," said when I explained the situation. "It's the least I can do after everything you've been through." True to her word, Grandma started sending me money for rent and even visited me a few times. During one of her visits, we had a heart-to-heart. "You know, Meryl," she said, sipping her tea, "I feel guilty about Sarah. I thought I could handle her, but still I'm glad I can help you. You deserve it, sweetheart." Those years in college were tough, but also liberating. For the first time, I was free from Sarah's shadow. I made friends, studied hard, and even started dating a bit. After graduation, I landed a job in the same city and decided to stay. It felt good to have my own life, away from the chaos at home. I did visit my parents occasionally, but Sarah was never around. One time I asked Mom about her. "Oh, she's out with friends," Mom said, wringing her hands. "She's been gone for days now. We can barely keep track of her anymore." Dad chimed in, always with different boys too. "There's Jake, or was it John? And then there's that Mike fellow." I raised an eyebrow. "And you're okay with this?" Mom shrugged helplessly. "What can we do? It's just how she is. The psychologist says it's part of her condition." I bit my tongue to keep from saying what I really thought. It was always excuses with them when it came to Sarah. During another visit, I found Mom crying in the kitchen. "What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed. She wiped her eyes. "It's Sarah. She's been gone for 2 weeks this time. We don't know where she is or who she's with." I felt a pang of worry, despite everything. "Have you called the police?" Dad shook his head. "We did once before. She came back on her own and was furious with us for reporting her missing. Said we were trying to control her life." I left that day feeling frustrated and sad. It was clear that nothing had changed. Sarah was still the center of their world, no matter how badly she behaved. As I drove back to my apartment, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the life I'd built for myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Time flies when you're building your own life. Before I knew it, 3 years had passed since I'd graduated college. I was settling into my career, making new friends, and finally feeling like I had some stability. Then came the phone call that threw me for a loop. "Meryl? It's Mom. You'll never guess what's happened. Sarah's getting married." I nearly dropped the phone. "Married? Sarah?" Mom's voice was brimming with excitement. "Yes, can you believe it? She just told us. The wedding's in 2 months. You'll come, won't you?" Still in shock, I agreed. The day of the wedding arrived, and I flew back home. As I helped Sarah get ready, she dropped another bombshell. "Mom and Dad are paying for our honeymoon," she said smugly. 2 weeks in Bali. First class all the way. I bit my tongue. Of course they were. That's nice of them, I managed. Sarah smirked. Well, they owe me. After all the crap I've been through. I wanted to point out that most of that crap was of her own making, but I held back. It was her wedding day, after all. When I finally met Sarah's fiancé, Mark, I was taken aback. He was nothing like I'd imagined. Tall, handsome, and at least 10 years older than Sarah, he exuded an air of calm confidence. It's great to finally meet you, Meryl, he said, shaking my hand. Sarah's told me so much about you. I raised an eyebrow at Sarah, wondering what exactly she'd told him. To my surprise, the wedding went off without a hitch. Sarah looked radiant, and for once, she seemed genuinely happy. As I watched them exchange vows, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this really would be the turning point for her. At the reception, Mom cornered me by the punch bowl. Isn't this wonderful, Meryl, she gushed. Sarah's really landed on her feet. Mark's so successful, and he clearly adores her. I nodded, sipping my drink. It's great, Mom. I'm happy for her. Then came the kicker. You know, sweetie, maybe it's time you started thinking about settling down too. You're not getting any younger. I nearly choked on my punch. Mom, I'm only 26. She patted my arm. I know, dear. But look at Sarah. She's really got it all figured out now. As I flew back to my city the next day, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Despite everything, I genuinely hoped Sarah had found happiness. But a small part of me wondered how long it would last. Life went on. I threw myself into work, trying not to dwell on my family's dynamics. Then, about a year after Sarah's wedding, something unexpected happened. I met someone. His name was Tom, and we hit it off immediately. He was kind, funny, and actually listened when I talked. For the first time, I felt like I'd found someone who saw me for who I really was. 2 years flew by in a whirlwind of dates, laughter, and deepening love. Then, on a crisp autumn evening, Tom got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. As I said yes, tears of joy streaming down my face, I felt like my life was finally falling into place. Planning my wedding to Tom was like a dream. For once, I was the center of attention, and it felt amazing. I was determined to make it perfect, a day that was all about us and our love. Of course, I invited my family. Despite everything, they were still my parents, and Sarah was still my sister. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, this happy occasion would bring us all together. When Sarah showed up at the venue, she was alone. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Where's Mark? I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Sarah shrugged. Couldn't make it. Is everything okay? I pressed. It's fine, she snapped. Can we drop it? I backed off, not wanting to start an argument on my wedding day. But later, I overheard Mom and Dad talking in hushed tones. I'm worried about Sarah and Mark, Mom was saying. They're fighting all the time now. But it's not her fault, she's just high-spirited. Mark needs to be more understanding. I walked away, shaking my head. Some things never change. The ceremony was beautiful, everything I'd dreamed of. Tom's eyes shone with love as we said our vows, and for a while I forgot all about the family drama. But at the reception, Sarah made sure she couldn't be ignored. She got drunk, loudly flirted with Tom's friends, and even tried to give a speech that quickly devolved into a rant about how unfair her life had been. I gritted my teeth and plastered on a smile, determined not to let her ruin my day. Tom, bless him, stuck by my side, squeezing my hand supportively. As Sarah was dragged off the dance floor by our embarrassed parents, I made a silent vow to myself. This was the last time I'd let her drama overshadow my life. For a while, it seemed like I might actually keep that vow. Tom and I settled into married life, and I heard little from my family beyond the occasional phone call. Then, almost exactly a year after our wedding, my phone rang. It was Mom, and she was crying. Meryl, it's Sarah. Mark left her. Between sobs, Mom explained. Mark had found out about Sarah's multiple affairs and filed for divorce. She was devastated, they said. Acting out worse than ever. We don't know what to do, Mom wailed. The psychologist says she needs a change of scenery, some time away to heal. I knew what was coming before she said it. Honey, we were hoping. Could Sarah stay with you for a while? Remember how we sent her to your grandmother's so you could study for your exams? We need your help now. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar weight of family obligations settling on my shoulders. Let me talk to Tom, I said finally. After I hung up, I sat Tom down and explained the situation. He listened patiently, his brow furrowed with concern, but finally agreed. Sarah arrived on a Tuesday, looking like a shadow of her former self. Her eyes were puffy from crying, and she barely spoke above a whisper. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine pang of sympathy for my little sister. Come on, I said gently, leading her to the guest room. Let's get you settled in. Tom was amazing those first few days. He cooked Sarah's favorite meals, engaged her in light conversation, and even took a day off work to help us go shopping for some new clothes to cheer her up. But as the saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. About a week into Sarah's stay, I started noticing changes. Small things at first, a lingering look here, an accidental brush against Tom there. I tried to brush it off as my imagination running wild. Then one day I came home from work to find Sarah parading around the living room in what could barely be called underwear. Tom was sitting on the couch, looking incredibly uncomfortable. Sarah, I exclaimed. What are you doing? She turned, feigning innocence. Oh, hi Meryl, I was just about to take a shower. It's so hot today, isn't it, Tom? Tom mumbled something incoherent and practically ran from the room. That night, I confronted Sarah. Look, I know you're going through a tough time, but you need to respect our home and our marriage. She rolled her eyes. God, Meryl, don't be such a prude. I was just trying to cool off. I didn't buy it for a second, but I let it go. Big mistake. Over the next few days, Sarah's behavior became more and more brazen. She'd accidentally walk in on Tom in the bathroom, or bend over suggestively when he was around. I was at my wit's end. Then came the day that broke the camel's back. I came home early from work, a migraine pounding behind my eyes. As I approached our apartment, I heard Sarah's voice, loud and clear. Come on, Tom, Meryl never has to know. Don't you want to have some real fun for once? I burst through the door to find Sarah pressed up against my husband, her hands on his chest. Tom looked horrified. Meryl, he exclaimed, pushing Sarah away. This isn't what it looks like. Sarah spun around, a look of faux shock on her face. Oh my God, Meryl, I'm so embarrassed. I just tripped and Tom caught me. I saw red. Get out, I said, my voice dangerously low. Pack your things and get the hell out of my house, now. Sarah's face contorted with rage. Fine, I never wanted to stay in this dump anyway. You're pathetic, Meryl. Always so boring, so frigid. She turned to Tom, who was standing there in shock. You could do so much better than her, you know. A hot piece like me instead of Ice Queen Meryl. I grabbed her arm and dragged her to the guest room. You have 5 minutes to pack, or I'm throwing your stuff out the window. As Sarah scrambled to gather her things, hurling insults the whole time, I turned to Tom. He looked devastated. Meryl, I swear nothing happened. She's been trying for days, but I would never. I cut him off with a hug. I know. I trust you. I'm so sorry I put you through this. We held each other as we listened to Sarah's continued tirade. Finally, she emerged from the room, suitcase in hand. You'll regret this, she spat. Both of you. As the door slammed behind her, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. As we stood there in our now quiet apartment, I realized something. The family I'd spent my whole life trying to please, trying to fix, they weren't my real family anymore. Tom was. And it was time I started putting our life, our marriage, first. I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee the next morning when my phone rang. It was Mom. I braced myself and answered. How could you, Meryl? Mom's voice was shrill with anger. Kicking your own sister out onto the street. I thought we raised you better than that. I took a deep breath. "Mom, it's not what you think." But she cut me off. "Sarah told us everything. How you got jealous because she and Tom were getting along. How you made up lies about her to justify throwing her out. I'm so disappointed in you." My jaw dropped. "What? Mom, that's not true at all. Sarah tried to seduce Tom. She was walking around half naked, throwing herself at him. She even propositioned him." There was a pause, then Dad's voice came on the line. "Now, Meryl, don't you think you're exaggerating a bit? We know Sarah has her issues, but she's family, and family supports each other, no matter what." Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and resentment came pouring out. "Support? Where was your support when I was trying to study for college and Sarah was making my life hell? Where was your support when you cut me off financially because you were too busy catering to Sarah's every whim? I've spent my entire life trying to understand and make allowances for Sarah. And I'm done. I'm done being the responsible one, the one who always has to sacrifice. You raised her to be this way, and now you can deal with the consequences." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Dad spoke, his voice cold. "If that's how you feel, maybe it's best we don't speak for a while. And don't be surprised if the rest of the family feels the same way once they hear about this." I laughed bitterly. "Is that supposed to be a threat? Go ahead. Tell them whatever version of the story makes you feel better about your parenting failures." I hung up. True to my parents' word, the calls started coming in. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them expressing their shock and disappointment in my cruel treatment of Sarah. "How could you abandon your sister in her time of need?" my Aunt Linda scolded. "I always knew you were jealous of Sarah, but this is a new low," cousin Mike messaged me. I tried explaining the truth to the first few, but it quickly became clear that their minds were made up. Sarah and my parents had spun a tale of my jealousy and cruelty, and the family had lapped it up. The final straw came when I logged onto Facebook. There, in black and white, was a post from Sarah. Heartbroken. "My own sister threw me out when I needed her most. I guess blood isn't always thicker than water. Family drama betrayed." The comments were a cesspool of family members and old acquaintances expressing their sympathy for Sarah and their disgust with me. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I could respond, tell my side of the story. But what was the point? They'd already made up their minds. With a heavy heart, I began blocking numbers and unfriending relatives on social media. It hurt, cutting ties with people I'd known my whole life. But as I looked over at Tom, who had stayed by my side through all of this, I knew I was making the right choice. In the weeks that followed the fallout with my family, I felt like I was walking through a fog. The pain of being ostracized by my own relatives was raw and ever-present. But amidst the darkness, there was one beacon of light: my grandmother. "Meryl, dear," she said during one of our weekly phone calls, "I want you to know that I believe you. I know Sarah, and I know you. You did the right thing." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thanks, Grandma. You don't know how much that means to me." She chuckled softly. "Oh, I think I do. Now tell me about your week. How's that wonderful husband of yours?" And just like that, life went on. Tom and I settled into a peaceful routine, free from the drama that had plagued us for so long. We traveled, pursued our careers, and even started talking about starting a family of our own. Months passed, then a year. I heard snippets about my family through the grapevine. Sarah had moved back in with our parents, apparently unable to support herself after the divorce. But I pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on my own life. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I hadn't seen in over a year: my parents. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello." "Meryl," it was my mother, her voice choked with tears. "Meryl, we need your help." A familiar weight settled in my stomach. "What's wrong?" Between sobs, she explained. Sarah had spiraled out of control. She was bringing strange men home, throwing wild parties, and had even physically threatened our parents when they tried to intervene. "She kicked us out." Meryl, Dad's voice came on the line. "We're staying at a motel. We don't know what to do. Can you come talk to her? Maybe she'll listen to you?" I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of emotions wash over me: anger, pity, frustration, but mostly I felt nothing. "No," I said quietly. "I can't." "But Meryl," Mom started. I cut her off. "No, Mom, I'm done. I've spent my entire life cleaning up Sarah's messes, making excuses for her behavior, and when I finally stood up for myself, you all turned your backs on me. This is your problem now. You raised her, you enabled her. Now you have to deal with the consequences." Before they could respond, I hung up. Then, with a sense of finality, I blocked their numbers. Tom found me on the couch a little while later, staring into space. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. I looked up at him and smiled. Really smiled. "You know what? It is. For the first time in my life, I think everything is actually okay." As we sat there, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Yes, I had lost the family I was born into, but I had gained so much more. I had Tom, my rock and my partner. I had my grandmother who loved me unconditionally. And most importantly, I had myself stronger and more self-assured than ever before. The next day, I called my grandmother. "Hey, Grandma, how would you like to come visit for a while? Tom and I were thinking of redecorating the guest room, and we could use your expert eye." Her joy was palpable through the phone. "Oh, Meryl, I'd love to. When should I come?" As I hung up, making plans for my grandmother's visit, I realized something. This was what family should be. People who support you, love you, and bring joy to your life.